If allowed to continue, this process will turn the United States into a declining, unfair society with an impoverished, angry, uneducated population under the control of a small, ultra-wealthy elite. Such a society would be not only immoral but also eventually unstable, dangerously ripe for religious and political extremism. People need to understand that the decisions that are made in Washington, or London, or Paris, have real consequences for people all over the world. If you do an investigation properly and seriously, you will very often find very disturbing things. That doesn't mean it's a good idea not to do the investigation. This whole force is utterly demoralized by victory. There seems to be neither head nor tail. Documentaries, I think, are very powerful. If you do them properly, and if they are honest and well researched, they can change public opinion, and they can influence policy. Forgive me, I must start by pointing out that 3 years after our horrific financial crisis caused by financial fraud, not a single financial executive has gone to jail, and that's wrong. You shall hear a good account of me or of my death. When the financial crisis arrived, it seemed to me that this was something I had to make a movie about. I sort of plunged into filmmaking. I decided I'd jump off the deep end, so I started thinking about what kind of a movie I should try to make. The world is more complex than we think. A functioning democracy requires citizens to be informed and to take an active role in governance. It's not sufficient to just show up at the polls and vote, people need to know what they are voting about. A functioning democracy requires informed citizens. Thus far, both political parties have been remarkably clever and effective in concealing this new reality. In fact, the two parties have formed an innovative kind of cartel, an arrangement I have termed America's political duopoly. Both parties lie about the fact that they have each sold out to the financial sector and the wealthy. So far both have largely gotten away with the lie, helped in part by the enormous amount of money now spent on deceptive, manipulative political advertising. It is much simpler and easier to collect and caress the trophies of our democratic inheritance than it is to fashion up-to-date tools with which to work on our current problems. The real challenge is figuring out how the United States can regain control of its future from its new oligarchy and restore its position as a prosperous, fair, well-educated nation. For if we don't, the current pattern of great concentration of wealth and power will worsen, and we may face the steady immiseration of most of the American population. When the US government is serious about doing something that's complicated and difficult, it can do it. Any attempt to disturb the deadly routine of instruction is looked upon as sabotage. And the notion that the aims and functions of education should be determined in the local community by a close and continuous discussion among students, faculty, administration, and citizens is so visionary that it is not even seriously considered. I'm actually all in favor of freeing the entrepreneurial spirit, but it turns out, interestingly, that you actually need very strict regulations to free the entrepreneurial spirit. But that's not how most of the people mentioned in this book became wealthy. Most of them became wealthy by being well connected and crooked. And they are creating a society in which they can commit hugely damaging economic crimes with impunity, and in which only children of the wealthy have the opportunity to become successful. A fierce and sentimental addiction to forms makes us shudder at change. It is much easier to say that the system is all right, only the people need to be improved. One of the things I hope that my films can do is to help people understand that the world is more complex than they might have thought and that many of the problems that we face are not easy to solve. I'd been a film maniac since I was very young. By the time I was 8 or 9 years old, I was hooked on movies. WikiLeaks combines several of my prior interests in technology, policy questions, and journalism. When people ask me, what can we do to fix the financial system? I say, you are really asking the wrong question. The question is, how do we get the political system to fix the financial system? It is no exaggeration to say that since the 1980s, much of the global financial sector has become criminalized, creating an industry culture that tolerates or even encourages systematic fraud. The behavior that caused the mortgage bubble and financial crisis of 2008 was a natural outcome and continuation of this pattern, rather than some kind of economic accident. I used to be a businessman, and I enjoyed what I did, and I thought that it was socially useful. I don't have anything against business or private enterprise or capitalism per se, but I think that it is time to rethink the regulation of capitalism.